Hello, and welcome to Design Review, the podcast for engineering your life. I'm Robert Haines, the founder, and today I have extra special guest, Reverend Lezli Goodwin, my spiritual mentor and associate minister at New Vision Center for Spiritual Living, my spiritual home, uh, and somebody I've gotten to share deeply with in my studies over the last 4 or 5 years now. And so I am delighted, Reverend Lezli, to have you on my show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really kind of you to invite me on.
Oh, my pleasure. And I've been like bouncing up and down thinking about this conversation to come. I didn't give much of an intro for you before we get into the rest of the format where we talk about why. Would you like to give a brief intro of yourself so people know who they're dealing with? I had thoughts the last few days of all kinds of things I could list.
So there's a running joke in my family. I have 5 adult kids, and the running joke is nobody thinks that I am real because my kids will describe me or they'll talk about me or something that's going on with me, and they will say, "Wait, I thought your mom was a singer and a recording artist. Now you're saying she's a minister. Wait, I thought your mom was a jewelry designer. Wait, I thought your mom was a painter and ran art galleries." And so I've had a number of things that I've done through my life, and I don't seem to ever put any of them completely down. But my professional world is that I am an associate minister through Centers for Spiritual Living at New Vision Center in Phoenix, Arizona. And what I do, kind of big picture is, among other things, I run the adult education program all the way from your very first class through the program, the 2-year training program that we do for our lay clergy that we call practitioner training, and get them revved up and ready to be spiritual leaders in the world. In addition to that, I love to work with one-on-one in spiritual guidance and mentoring practitioners, incoming practitioner students, people who already are practitioners, and ministers in training, as well as ministers in their pulpits, to help grow their spiritual life as well.
So delightful. And of course, we need not leave out the fact that I'm one of those people headed towards practitioner training, having just completed 4 years worth of prerequisites. Now I get to start the 2-year program next fall, which I'm really excited about and nervous about at the same time.
Yeah, there are a lot of prerequisites, and the training is 2 years, as you well know, having been preparing for it. And the reason is, these are people, when you're complete with your practitioner training, you are hands-on with the congregation, with individuals who are going through it. And part of the job of being a practitioner, or really a spiritual leader in any sense, is to be able to see through the challenge that they're in right now, through the muddle that they can't see through because it's theirs,
Yeah.
to the pattern underneath, and to help them dismantle that. And in order to be able to do that, A, you have to be highly trained, and B, you have to have really worked through the majority of your own stuff, at least move the needle on the things that trigger you. Otherwise, you'll be triggered by your own clients. You'll be sitting with someone wanting to help them, and your stuff can get in the way. So we really work deeply with these prospective practitioners, and the same process happens through ministerial training and being a minister. We stay people. There isn't anything that happens to us that takes the peopling out of us. So we have to really do our very best to have the clearest consciousness as we possibly can, and also be wise enough to know when we need to go see our practitioner or our minister, because we are still people and things will come up.
As they have been in my growth path,
Yeah.
because I see you every week, sometimes multiple times a week. For my own work, also as the spiritual consultant for my business. Sometimes for relationships too. It's just like throw it all in there. But it's been really, really phenomenal for me to have the support that I need to know my truth and to be able to have compassion for whatever is coming up for me and with my business as well. So a delight to have you here and to share you with my people who are going to get to watch this episode. So we're gonna be talking about a passion or project of yours, and I believe we talked earlier that would be the training of spiritual leaders. Is that still up for
Absolutely.
you?
I
Awesome.
love it. I could talk about that all day, every day.
Well, and I adore that. And as you know, part of why I care about that in particular is because my work is to help uh, help leaders that will then help leaders that will then help leaders. And so it's kind of like similar, but in my world, it's more like the technical coaching side.
Hmm.
And then practitioner will just add a whole other dimension to that, but it's still very similar work. So
Very related. Absolutely.
yeah.
Very related.
So I appreciate that. So the first thing is, given that this is a design review and we kind of treat this, with the engineering map that I tend to use on life, as if we're going to talk about that, there's the why, such that training spiritual leaders is the answer. And so my first question to you is what is your why? And you can go as far back on the journey as you choose to. But I'm looking forward to this because I don't think I've ever had the chance to listen to the full explanation.
Oh gosh. Okay, so the short answer of why is because the world needs it, right? But that's not what you want to hear. You want to hear the fun stuff.
Well, I will take that. That's a good answer. And
And talk about go back as far as we can. I came out of the womb, I think, a questioning person who craved um, God or that spiritual essence. I wanted it so badly, and my family sort of thought, "Oh, that's interesting." I remember my mom saying, "You really don't have to read the whole Bible. Like no one does." But I was driven. I wanted to understand this sense that I had of the greater experience. And the interesting thing is I didn't experience it in church. I didn't experience it in the Bible. I experienced it when I was outside playing, making art. And one time when a group of nuns who were doing charitable work came to our church, and I think it was during Mass. I grew up Catholic, and my aunt, who's my same age, which is a sign that you're Iowa and from Iowa and Catholic, um, we opened up our little coin purses and gave them all of our money. I think we were in late elementary school. Because they were doing something that meant something. And that really landed for both of us. Interestingly, she is the CEO of an organization that supports um, adults with illness, mental illness, and disability. So we landed in such different and yet similar lines of work. So I always wanted it. I knew that the Catholic Church just wasn't for me, um, largely because I was a little growing feminist, even in my early years. And a part of me I now recognize was always calling me into spiritual life, into clergy. And there wasn't a path for that in Catholicism. You can't be a priest in Catholicism. And so I did my big adventures wandering through many teachings, including paganism and all kinds of good stuff. And I just kind of kept needing the next thing. And what I realized now, looking back, is what I needed was spiritual community, because there just are some things that we can't work through all the way on our own. It takes being together and kind of bumping up against each other's rough edges to see where the growth is ready. And so when I landed here, here being New Vision Center in my early 30s, I was ready. I was ready to see how deeply I could take this idea of being a spiritual leader wherever I was in my own life. And I want to define what I mean by a spiritual leader, because I think that that's important. I'm not talking necessarily about religiosity. I'm talking about the universal principles of how life works on the energetic form. Like we know the Newtonian laws. If we're big nerds like Robert and we know some of the quantum physics laws, but I think we all know there's this energetic sense of how the world works, whether you believe in a God or not. Frankly, I don't think it matters. I think it matters that you understand, that one understands that the source of the good of life is here, not out there. That
Yeah.
there's a way that the energy of the world works and we access it through our inner path. And so I got very interested in growing my own inner path and becoming my own spiritual leader. And I realized how much of a difference it made to my children, who were teenagers at the time, or
Mm.
junior high teenagers,
Yeah.
to my relationship, my love relationship, my husband, to how I showed up in my extended family. It made me a stronger person everywhere
Yeah.
as I was growing my particular path, which was to grow in leadership in the organization of Centers for Spiritual Living.
Love that. And that's the path that got you there. What had you get really clear that helping to grow spiritual leaders was your path?
Well, one of the 57 things I have done in my life is run a marketing company. And so sometimes I will talk about spirituality in the realm of marketing and manufacturing, and it scales. It scales. Like the most impactful work that I have found is one-on-one, like face to face, sit down or get on Zoom and grind it out together. That kind of work really moves the needle for a lot of people. And I only have so much time. Now, I will say, and I'm not shy to say it, I think I'm very good at my job. I think I'm very good at helping people find what's in their way and move through it using spiritual tools. And I just only have so many hours. And as I started, just because of the position I'm in, I love to teach. I love to teach advanced metaphysics, which is what practitioner training is. And I realized this is my path to impacting on a global level. Every person I train, support, coach, mentor ends up touching, 100 other people who end up touching 100 other people. And that's how the ripple grows.
I love that answer. Also, I relate to it. Although I didn't come about it in the same way. I didn't like logically think, how am I going to impact the world? I just found out that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
The people that I naturally work with, and at this point, it's all of them,
Yeah.
are people that are natural leaders that want to share what they've gotten with other people. And I have folks of various different walks of life,
Mm-hmm.
from early in career through, nearly retired or whatever. But they're all people where helping others is a priority to them. And it just, as I observed it, I'm like, well, okay, fine. That works for me. And so as a consequence, it is the way to make a difference globally. So I love hearing that as the explanation. So go ahead.
I have a thought. Something about me that is just an interesting thing about me is I'm virtually never the head of an organization. I've been the second in line in multiple organizations.
Yeah.
And I really like that role because I am a big fan of non-hierarchical power structures,
Yeah. Yeah.
or as little hierarchy as can be organized. And there is something about stepping back into being a part of the web instead of needing to stand away and look down at the web that makes this scalable rippling out of energies just makes so much more sense to me.
I I get that. And I feel the same way. I've never been the captain exactly
Mm-hmm.
of
Till
most things
now.
that I've been in. Well, yeah, I guess so. But even then, my work isn't traditional leadership.
True.
My work is to support people that are actually going to do the work. So in a way, I'm behind the scenes.
There's a
But
freedom to it. I enjoy
yeah,
it. And it gives me all this space. You've probably heard me tell this little joke before, but when I stepped out of co-senior ministry into associate ministry, people kept asking me why. And there's a number of reasons, including I wanted to spend my time differently. But what I said over and over is if I ever have to sit in another meeting about the vent cleaning schedule, something will happen. It just felt like so much of my time was being spent on things that were important, but not important that I be the one to do it.
I hear you. And yep, I guess my version of that, because there's going to be a mirror to most things that you bring up, I suspect, it's like I retired. Well, from engineering, at least. I mean, so the day-to-day stuff that are associated with running a business, which are important,
Mm-hmm.
I now get to choose much more so
Yeah.
what I do and what I don't do, and largely what I get to do now is what lights me up. It's convenient that way.
I mean, I genuinely believe, and I think that universal principles show us that that thing that lights us up on the inside of ourselves is what we're being spiritually called to do and be in the world. And anything that takes us out of that or interrupts the flow of that
Yeah.
is something to really look at. Could this be done by someone else? Is this the role? Can I delegate it out? Can I decide it doesn't need to happen? How can we move those things out of the way so we can be as on purpose and on calling as possible the majority of the time?
I love that description. It brings me into something I hadn't really planned to bring up exactly, but something that may intrigue a number of people that are like watching this is when we think of like a minister or spiritual teaching or a church, I tend to put it in air quotes.
Yeah, that tracks.
There's a view of what it is, and that view often involves, here's these things to do, here's these things to believe, here's these actions to take, and here's what you will do. Meanwhile, my experience of this center, which is one of the reasons that I'm enjoying it so much and leaning in as much as I am, is it's like what you were just talking about. It's more like how, it's also like a lot of what the like self-help community is trying to do, which is like, how do you live a life that works? How do you live a life that's in alignment and gives you the most that you can? And so, I don't think we can get through this adequately without having a bit of a chat about what Centers for Spiritual Living, how it manages to be a very practical, applied life lesson kind of a thing, which I suppose anybody that reads my blog for long realizes that's what I'm up to is, how do I live my life better? And a lot of it comes from this teaching. I have a lot of background, but a good chunk of it's coming from this. So maybe say a little bit about how on earth there is a spiritual organization that looks like a church that's talking about, good ways to live your life that work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've heard it called spicy psychology, and I just think it's funny, but it's pretty accurate. Centers for Spiritual Living teaches the philosophy of science of mind, which was created by Ernest Holmes in the early 1900s and is still going strong today. And there are, within Centers for Spiritual Living, around 400 organizations that are doing some variation of what we're talking about right now. And we are not concerned with what you think or believe. We are not here to tell you what to think or what to believe. We are here to teach you how to think and how to be at choice in your beliefs. There are universal laws that listeners, about and believe whether you realize it or not. Things like what goes around comes around. We would call that the law of cause and effect. If you want to get something, give. We would call that the law of circulation. It's pretty common sense. It really is. And we know it because there are these phrases that have come up through generations and generations of truth. And we will quote them at each other and we'll put them in greeting cards and we'll give great advice using them. And then when it comes to our challenges, oh boy, all that's right out the window. and we're caught in the tangle of our own emotions around what's going on. And so what we do is we use these laws to help people figure out, use the phrase, how to live a better life, how to live a more successful life, how to live a more
Yeah.
joyful life, but according to the individual's definition of what that means. We're
Yeah.
not here to tell you you should think this way, do this job, do these behaviors or don't. We're here to help you figure out what your own values are and how to align with those. That's what we call integrity. When you're living out loud what you say you value, that's integrity. And it doesn't matter if it matches what I say at all, because that's not what I'm here for. It's people will say Centers for Spiritual Living is spiritual, not religious. And to me, that's where the line is. Religious has rules,
Yeah.
sometimes very famously a list of 10 of them or a list of 167 of them.
Yeah.
And we just really simplify all of that down to do whatever works for you as long as it is life affirming, meaning you're not hurting anybody and you're not hurting yourself. And we take away all of that. We don't believe in selfishness, because people don't actually worry about being selfish when they're being selfish. They worry about being selfish when they're actually taking care of themselves. So we just take selfish off the table. We don't worry about greedy. Greedy implies that God or spirit or the universe is some limited, contained, um, finite resource, which is ridiculous. We believe in an infinite flowing good. And so there's no need, these religious overtone insults we've given to ourselves and
Yeah.
ground ourselves in to the dust about, they're just not necessary. They're just not necessary. And so
Oh,
when we take that stuff off the table, then we get into the really good stuff.
well, and all of that was such a breath of fresh air when I discovered the center about 6 years ago that it was the first time I actually found an organization of this sort that I'm like, okay, this is cool. I'm good with that. I wasn't like fighting it in the back room and saying, okay, I'll think this way here, and then I'll go back to my real life and like leave it alone.
Right. Because when people do that, the opposite of integrity, right? I'm going to be really well behaved in the sanctuary when I think my ministers are looking, and then I won't think about it again until the next Sunday morning.
Yeah.
That just doesn't help anybody. What we're all looking for is to understand what love is in our lives, what success is in our lives, what meaning is in our lives.
Yeah.
And I think working with people to find that definition for themselves and then to support them in shifting the way they live their life so that they're more aligned with those truths that they've created for themselves. That's growing spiritual leaders. And it's so exciting to watch it evolve.
Well, and that brings us kind of like into the sort of like the next thing. So part of it is like, and you shared some of this earlier, which I always ask people, like, on the journey that you've had, what's worked well, what hasn't, kind of like, and what lessons have been learned along the way. And, we've talked about enough to fill 10 podcast episodes. So, we'll just maybe take a couple example or highlights, but it's, um, yeah. So, I guess maybe anything that stands to mind about, what's gone well on this journey of growing spiritual
Mm-hmm.
leaders in particular. So now we'll go back to that track, to shift back to that specific track, and what hasn't worked well on the journey, just to, because I'm a firm believer in like learning from things that didn't go well, because most of my life I lived in a space of don't let anything ever go wrong ever. And I
Right.
can say that was a very relaxed way to live my life.
It even sounds relaxed the way you said it. Yeah.
So how about
So,
that?
so in order to become someone who helps grow spiritual leaders, I had to become a spiritual leader. And the first thing that didn't go well was well before I thought that was even a thing. I mean, I had my little pagan, we called ourselves a circle. Some of us called it a coven. That met at my house and did fun things, but I wasn't, I wasn't conceiving of myself as a spiritual leader. And in that period of time, I was existing in a marriage that started when I was very young. That was, suffice it to say, not productive for either of us. And I love when we discover that things are not working, because almost always the beautiful affirmation that guides the forward momentum comes from that. And the mantra, if you will, that I find from that time was, slow down, sweet girl. There's no rush. There was no rush to get married. There's no rush to have, 3.5 children before a certain age. Slow down. Take a breath. It's all going to land where it's supposed to land. And I genuinely think that with ending that marriage, it did all land where it was supposed to land. The next thing that kind of pops up for me is in my first class of practitioner students. And actually, when I was a practitioner student, I saw this pattern play out. And that was people who have self-identified as someone who wants to be a spiritual leader tend to be perfectionists. I am guilty. You, my friend, are guilty.
Oh, definitely.
It just tends to be. And I would see this pattern where in practitioner training, it's a professional program. It's run very much like college courses, and people would start to get behind on work. And it's a 2-year program. You start to get behind on work, and then it starts to snowball because you ask for extra time, and then now you're trying to do this assignment, but this assignment's due, now that assignment's late, and it would snowball and snowball and snowball, and people would quit the program because they were buried. And I was wise enough to follow the advice of someone along the way who said, always do exit interviews. If they want to quit, that's fine. Maybe their cup is full and they can't take anymore. That's great, but do an exit interview.
Okay.
And what I heard over and over was, I did the work, but it wasn't good enough, and I wanted to spend time doing it better. And so the lesson that came out of that from me was, I don't accept late work anymore. Not at the professional training level, because it forces people to turn in what is now. The minute before class starts, hit send on that assignment, however it is. And it's based in the spiritual truth that what is acceptable. What is good enough. Let it be. Do your best and then let it go.
I love that lesson, and I'm already feeling confronted by it. So it's like,
Oh yeah. You've heard it from me in forms like, get the B.
Yeah, that's
Celebrate
I quote
getting
that.
the B.
I quote that to lots of people who are now quoting that to lots of people, that you're touching the world with get a B.
Now, to be fair, I do want to admit, I was the girl that cried when I got an A- in ministerial school. When I got one A-, I cried. And so, yeah, like, it's not like I don't understand. But if we're going to get into leadership on any level, we have to let go of a couple of lies that we tell ourselves. One is, it has to be perfect. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. Done is better than never done, waiting for perfection.
Yeah.
Another one is, if I'm going to be in front of people, I have to know everything. No such thing.
I've had greater success with that one lately, but yeah, those are great lessons, and and I love the the learning from what's happened. It's one of I have pillars of stuff that I try to share with the world, and one of them is that.
It's a
A
really good
hard
one.
one.
Go ahead.
Sorry, hard one. I mean, I like you said, I've
Yeah.
clearly lived my life as a perfectionist, still working on it. But being able to be okay with what is so
Hmm.
freeing,
Yes.
and the struggle's not over.
I quote the Buddhists all the time. My husband is a Mahayana Buddhist, and they say that the source of all struggle, the source of all suffering, is the difference between what is and what we think it ought to be. And truly, truly, what is okay. Even if we can see a way that we think it would be better, what is okay. One group of people that I work with quite a lot are people who are experiencing chronic illness and disability.
Yeah.
And a huge, huge piece of helping folks come to a place of peace and empowerment around any kind of challenge that is outside of their immediate control is accepting what is. Not even liking it, just accepting it.
That's big. I've been going through a lot of that like the last week or so, which
Hmm.
has been it is incredibly freeing. Like the stress I feel, nothing changing in my life whatsoever,
Hmm.
but just accepting that what is okay.
We
Um,
waste so much energy making ourselves wrong for our thoughts, our ideas, our opinions, our physical bodies, our weight, our appearance,
oh yeah.
um, how much sleep we do or don't need. I mean, we make ourselves wrong constantly, and it's a huge sapping of energy.
Absolutely, and those lessons, again, hard won in a number of cases. That's part of what fueled me into wanting to coach, because like I did it the hard way for like 50 years. And I'm like, it doesn't need to do that. You don't need to suffer.
Hmm.
And so trying to help people find other ways of being is really helpful. So there's the journey. I mean, you kind of like, I asked you for things that didn't go well and things that did, and you gave me things that didn't go well and turned them into things that did, sort of like the lemons lemonade thing.
Well,
Um,
okay, and I don't want this to get watered down because it can, right? It can get
uh,
watered down. Um, I genuinely don't believe so. Almost anything, if it's a cliche, I don't believe it. But one of the things that people say a lot is, you know, God gave you that for a reason, or it's here to teach you a lesson, or it's a test.
yeah.
And I am an absolute no to that take. I do not, I cannot believe in a universe, a God, a divinity that's sitting there going, hee, see what they do with this test. No, no, that doesn't resonate for me. But I do know, like I know that we can learn, we can grow and make goodness out of every situation. If something doesn't go well, it is telling you what doesn't work for you. And that's a tremendous thing to know and to really recognize and build into your life.
And probably the single most freeing thing I've gotten is that, because
Hmm.
I've, like most human beings, I've had a lot of pain. And one, realizing what good has come from it is kind of like parallel with also my realization that most of my pain is self-caused, which is, the suffering due to attachment, which is also, a kind of a parallel um, Buddhist concept. But it's those have been huge, and what I love about those is you don't actually have to change anything out there
Right.
to drastically change your life experience. Well, I guess that becomes change your thinking, change your life, doesn't it?
It really does. It really does. Um, and that's, I mean, truly, that's the first lesson we need to embody if we wish to be a spiritual leader anywhere in our world, is to recognize that anything that needs to be different in our world has to start here. It has to start here. When we are moving the chess pieces in the physical material world, we can make our life look different, but it doesn't make it feel different. Wherever we go, there we are. And so you can rearrange the chairs on the Titanic all day long, every day, and you will still feel the same about your life. But the moment you realize anything I've created through my own thinking, through my own perspective, anything I create, I can uncreate, I can recreate. Now we've taken acceptance into empowerment. And that's where things get really exciting.
And I adore that. And, I love being able to take this out into the world because it makes such a difference for like everybody, to be able to take that. Again, another example of that. So also realizing that I could run us out of time very easily, but what I'd like to talk about before we start to like wind it down is, so where does this go? So what is your vision of the work that you're doing
Mm-hmm.
in the realm of developing spiritual leaders? Like, okay, and it could be, how does it roll out now that you've already rippled your way into the world? But, what's the future look like for what you're doing with that and what that effort looks like?
Absolutely. There are a couple of great answers to that. The first one is I'm preparing for my next group of 2-year trainees to come through in a little bit less than a year. We've got another group coming in, and you are one of them. So I'm preparing that group, giving guidance on to how to best prepare themselves for that 2-year process. Um, Another thing is I found another way to scale, which is, that's my deal, another way to scale. So as a lifelong teacher, somebody who really values education and being an educator, I have started working with home office to write classes for them, for ministerial ongoing education. And I've been contracted to write my first course that will be open to the entire field. So my first spiritual book I wrote was on spiritual mind treatment, which is our form of affirmative prayer. It's called Built on Faith, Transforming Your Life Through Affirmative Prayer.
Yeah.
I am maniacal about prayer and spiritual practice. And so I will be working with home office to write the new spiritual mind treatment class, which
Oh,
that's big fun.
oh,
That's
that's
big fun.
exciting. Len,
And so knowing thousands of people maybe taking that class and learning that particular tool that takes us through that practice of what do I value? Literally, this is how our prayers are structured. What do I value most, and what do I want to get out of walking out that value? How can I remember that in spirit, in the universe, what in the way the world works, whatever language works for you, that quality already exists, and I am part of that universe, so it's in me. And so of course I can claim walking out that value in fill in the blank way. Of course I can. The entire power of the universe is operating with me. And it's just so exciting to see the way people's lives start to shift when they take ownership of not what some book says they should think, but what they think and want in their lives. Not what their parents wanted them to be when they grow up, but who do they want to be in the world? And so that's super exciting. And following through on my big theme of I'm obsessed with spiritual practice. And by spiritual practice, so what I'm talking about there is any kind of practice that anchors you in the truth. And in my world, I've created something that I call daily substantial spiritual practice that has 4 pieces to it, 4 modules to it. And one is talking to spirit in the form that makes sense to you, a conversation, uh, an in your mind contemplation, a spiritual mind treatment, a prayer from the faith that you originate from. So talking to spirit, listening to spirit, meditation, quietude, mindfulness, reading wisdom,
mm-hmm.
the wisdom that is wisdom to you. It may be a religious text, it may be Marianne Williamson, whatever keeps you on the path that lines up with your values. And then the fourth one is self-reflection, journaling, working with a therapist, working with a spiritual mentor, a great talk with a like-minded friend. None of those practices really get anchored in until we reflect on what we're learning. And that's how we take it from here, an intellectual exercise, into embodiment. So I am, with that in mind, writing another book on spiritual practice.
That just seems so appropriate. And I was like thinking as you're talking about this, I have the great fortune and or nosiness to know a number of people that are like doing big things,
Mm-hmm.
and to know them and know what they're up to and what's behind it, and to like just see what you just said is like it's clearly that's your expression in life, and that's how I know you. And it's a real privilege for me to have the connection and to basically be able to point in lots of different directions and say, yeah, I know that person. I know the one doing that stuff. It says a lot about how the journey I've had to get to the point where now that's the kind of relationship I have. But it's an honor to know you and what you're up to, and to be able to just like say, yeah, all that you're listing there. So lovely, lovely, lovely. And I could, as we both know, talk to you for another hour or two, and would lose complete track of the time. Although I'm getting a lot better at knowing when the time is running out. But it has been wonderful to have you. So if anybody wants to reach you or New Vision Center, what would be the ways in which people would find you? I'm going to have you linked to this episode on LinkedIn.
Oh,
Delighted, by the way, that
fantastic.
you're on that platform. How would people reach you?
If you are interested in knowing more about my books or any of my products, or in working with me one-on-one on spiritual guidance, spiritual mentoring, you can find out more about that on my website, LezliGoodwin.com. Please note, my name is spelled like a crazy person, Lezli, and you got to get it right to find the right website. Um, if you want to know more about Centers for Spiritual Living or New Vision Center in particular, if you want to find out what we got going on over there, you can find us at newvisioncsl.org. Everything you need to know is there. And if you want to see me in action, you can find me on YouTube. Either Lezli Goodwin on YouTube, where you will see my talks and shorts, or New Vision CSL on YouTube, and you can see full services with all of our ministers and get a sense for what we teach.
Lovely. Well, thank you so very much for the time and for sharing, and for all the support that you've given me and that you will be giving me as we continue the journey, Lezli. It's lovely, lovely to have you here.
Thanks so much for inviting me on. This has been a good time.